Welcome to the Midnight Codex, where forgotten truths breathe and shadows tell their tale. Tonight, don't blink and don't look behind you.
I need to write this down. Maybe someone will believe me, but I don't think it matters anymore. If this ends the way I fear, no one will ever hear my story. But maybe if I can get it out there, someone might avoid my fate. Someone might live. My name is Liam Ward. A week ago, I was just a regular guy, the kind of guy that blends into the background. Nothing spectacular, nothing special, just a man doing his job, security guard, a steady job. No excitement, no stress, just the predictable rhythm of a paycheck. Then I lost it all. One phone call, and I was out. Unemployed, no notice, no explanation, just gone. That was when the letter arrived. It came in a brown envelope, nothing remarkable. Just a thick, old-fashioned piece of parchment. I almost threw it away. Another scam, another junk letter promising something I didn't need. But there was something about it. Something in the way the wax seal gleamed, as if it had been waiting for me to open it. I tore it open. It was brief. The handwriting was sharp, almost frantic. Liam Ward, if you're reading this, you may have already realized there are few choices left. Briarwood Carnival awaits you. It's a temporary position, but the compensation is unmatched. You must follow the rules. They are your only protection. You know what's at stake. Signed, the Briarwood Trust. I read it again. Briarwood Carnival. That name didn't ring a bell. It had been closed for decades, locked away in the memories of townsfolk who whispered about its haunted past. They said it was cursed. Something sinister happened there years ago. The rumors were thick with mystery, but no one really knew the full story. The place had been abandoned, forgotten, left to rot. But here I was, being invited to work there. The last line stuck with me. You must follow the rules. They are your only protection. It was almost a warning. My hands shook as I folded the letter, stuffing it into my coat pocket. The thought of turning it down crossed my mind. I thought about my bank account. I thought about how much I hated the feeling of not having a place in the world. I was desperate, and in that moment, the job was my only escape. I made a decision. I had nothing left to lose. The drive to Briarwood Carnival felt longer than it should have. The roads were winding, increasingly isolated, the landscape blurred by shadows, trees that seemed to close in on the narrow path. No signs, no markers, just the sound of my tires crunching on the gravel beneath me. When I finally arrived, I barely knew what I was looking at. The gates creaked open as I pushed them, a sound that sent a shiver through my spine. Briarwood was everything the rumors had promised and more. The carnival looked like a ghost town, not just abandoned but decaying, frozen in time, as if the world had forgotten about it entirely. The Ferris wheel loomed like a towering skeleton, its rusted metal shining faintly in the dying light. The carnival. Tents were frayed and torn, their once vibrant colors now faded and dull. A faint chill hung in the air, and the scent of mildew was thick, clinging to every corner. I walked through the entrance, hearing nothing but the distant creak of the Ferris wheel turning on its own. That's when I saw him. A man stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't tall or imposing, but there was something unsettling about the way he moved, like he was in control of every inch of the space around him. His eyes were cold, distant, like they had seen things I couldn't even imagine. "You're Liam Ward," he said, his voice low and almost monotone. "I'm Martha, the caretaker of Briarwood." I nodded, unsure of what to say. His presence was overpowering, and it felt like he knew more about me than I did myself. Martha didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he handed me a small card, a faded, yellowed piece of paper with black ink scribbled hastily across it. The rules. I read them, not sure what to think. The words seemed simple enough, but their weight pressed on me as if they were written with the ink of something far darker. Turn off the carnival lights at midnight. Never enter the House of Mirrors alone. If you hear music from the Ferris wheel, stay inside your office. Never look behind you when you hear someone call your name. I looked up at Martha. He was staring at me, his expression unreadable. His eyes flickered with something dark, something ancient. "You'll follow these rules, or you won't survive the night," he said. "This place, it has a way of drawing people in. But if you follow the rules, you might just make it out. If not—" His voice trailed off as if he didn't need to finish the sentence. I stared at the card for a long time, trying to make sense of it. What kind of carnival needed rules like these? What kind of job was this? "Do you understand?" Martha asked, his voice snapping me back to reality. I nodded. I didn't trust him, but I didn't have a choice. I had to do this, for the money, for survival. The night was cold when I started my shift. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence, the kind that made your skin crawl. I followed Martha's directions to my office, a small claustrophobic room with just a chair and a desk. The walls were covered with faded pictures of the carnival in its prime. Bright colors, laughing children, a far cry from the dead place it had become. As midnight approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I glanced out the window, watching as the carnival's lights flickered, then dimmed. A deep, unsettling stillness filled the air. I remembered the first rule. The Ferris wheel, the towering relic of rust and memory, began to move. Slowly, a grind of metal against metal. But no one was on it. No one ever had been. I swallowed hard and did what I'd been told. I turned off the lights. The moment I did, the carnival fell into darkness. And then the music started. It was faint at first, a soft melody carried on the wind. A tune I couldn't quite place, but one that tugged at something deep inside me. The Ferris wheel. It was playing music. By itself. The melody grew louder, more distorted. A chill ran down my spine. I looked at the clock. Midnight. I'd broken the first rule. And then, I heard it. A whisper, soft, almost too faint to hear. My name. Liam. It was coming from behind me. I froze. The fourth rule was clear. Never look behind you when you hear your name. But the whisper, it was calling me. And for a split second, I wondered if I'd been wrong. If it was just a figment of my imagination. I turned. Nothing. The carnival was still. But I knew then, I wasn't alone. Not here. Not anymore. I had broken the rules. As the silence crept back in, I heard it again. My name. Louder this time, closer. But this time I didn't turn. I didn't dare. Because in that moment I realized I wasn't hearing my name at all. I was hearing the voice of the one who had been here before me, and it wasn't calling me. It was warning me. Briarwood Carnival, despite its decay, felt alive. The very air around it buzzed with a sense of waiting, as if the carnival itself was holding its breath, anticipating my next move. I could feel the weight of the place settling over me as I walked through the rusted gates. The Ferris wheel loomed like a dark sentinel, its twisted frame groaning under the strain of years forgotten. The tents, now tattered and faded, whispered secrets I wasn't ready to hear. Every step I took felt heavier, as if the ground itself was trying to pull me deeper into the heart of this forsaken place. Martha, the caretaker, had led me through the gates. She was older than I expected. Her frail body bent with age, but her eyes, sharp and unwavering, were filled with a knowledge I couldn't quite understand. She had a quiet intensity about her, one that kept me on edge, like a tightrope strung above a dark abyss. "This place, it's not like others," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made me pause. "It's alive, and it has rules. Rules that must never be broken." I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her voice, in her demeanor, told me that asking would be pointless. Instead, I just nodded. She handed me a small yellowed card. The edges were frayed, the ink faded, but the words were still sharp, almost as if they had been etched into the paper by something far older than time itself. The rules were simple, but there was an unsettling finality to them. Turn off the carnival lights at midnight. Never enter the House of Mirrors alone. If you hear music from the Ferris wheel, stay inside your office. Never look behind you when you hear someone call your name. The simplicity of the rules made my skin crawl. They didn't feel like instructions. They felt like warnings, as though breaking them would lead to something far worse than I could comprehend. Martha studied me, her gaze piercing, as though she were seeing straight through me. "You'll understand soon enough," she said, her voice low, almost like a whisper. "But don't make the mistake of thinking they're just rules. They're not. They are your lifeline. If you break them—" Her voice trailed off, but the warning was clear. She didn't need to finish. Her words hung in the air, a tangible weight that pressed on my chest. The last light of day disappeared as the sky darkened, and I was left standing alone in the small office Martha had shown me. The room was barren, save for a chair, a desk, and the faint smell of dust and decay. The rules lay on the desk in front of me, their presence overwhelming, as though the very air was thick with their power. I sat in the chair, my fingers trembling as I traced the edges of the card. The rules felt absurd, and yet there was an unsettling certainty that they weren't just guidelines, they were things I had to follow. Or else. I glanced at the clock. The second hand ticked steadily toward midnight. The night seemed to stretch forever, each minute crawling by as I sat in the darkened office, my mind racing. The carnival outside was eerily quiet. No sounds of laughter, no distant chatter from visitors, just the heavy silence that seemed to consume everything. 11:50 p.m. I glanced at the clock again. The air had grown colder, and the faintest scent of mildew lingered in the room. I couldn't help but feel that I wasn't alone. I stood up slowly, my feet dragging as I walked toward the window. The carnival ground was still, save for the distant creak of the Ferris wheel swaying in the wind. The lights flickered. Then, without warning, they went out. It was midnight. I didn't know why, but I felt a surge of dread. The first rule, the one I had read over and over: turn off the carnival lights at midnight. I should have been relieved. I had done as I was told, but instead, I felt the weight of something else, something much darker. I hesitated, looking back at the now dark carnival. The lights, those dim, lifeless bulbs, had gone out, and the entire place was now shrouded in darkness. I took a step back, but then I heard it. A faint sound, distant, barely audible at first, but unmistakable once it settled into my ears. Music, a soft melody, a tune I didn't recognize. The Ferris wheel, unmoving and silent moments before, was now playing music. The same melody, repeating over and over. It wasn't supposed to play music. It wasn't supposed to move. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. The third rule: if you hear music from the Ferris wheel, stay inside your office, echoed in my mind like a drumbeat, and I realized I had already made my mistake. I had already disobeyed. The music continued, a haunting lullaby that seemed to seep through the walls. I glanced at the door, torn between staying where I was or investigating. But the rules were clear, and the more I thought about them, the more their weight pressed on me. Suddenly, I heard it. A voice, soft, almost gentle, but unmistakably clear. "Liam," I froze, my breath hitched in my throat. The fourth rule, never look behind you when you hear someone call your name, flashed in my mind, and I fought the instinct to turn around. But the voice, it sounded so familiar. It was a voice I couldn't place, but it stirred something in me, something buried deep. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. My legs felt like lead, and I was paralyzed by the weight of the decision to follow the rule or to ignore it, to look or to turn away. Another whisper. "Liam." I couldn't stop myself. My body moved before my mind could catch up. Slowly, I turned my head, my eyes searching the darkened room behind me. Nothing. Just the empty shadows, the flickering light from the carnival playing tricks on my eyes. The room was still. The music stopped. But I wasn't alone anymore. I felt a presence behind me, a breath hot against my skin. My stomach churned as the air grew thick, like I was no longer just in an office, but in a place where time and space were distorted. The rules. I had broken them. And now, the price of my defiance was about to unfold. I turned back toward the door, my heart pounding. But as I reached for the handle, A sudden sharp chill ran through my body. I wasn't just afraid, I was being watched, and the carnival was waiting for me to make my next mistake. The first night. It was supposed to be simple. The rules were clear, and the task at hand wasn't difficult. But as I stepped into the cold air of Briarwood Carnival, everything felt off. The wind didn't make a sound as it rustled the dead leaves, and the stillness of the place was unnatural. The carnival, though decaying and abandoned, waited. I could feel it in the air, like the whole place was holding its breath, anticipating something or someone. Martha's words echoed in my mind. Follow the rules. It seemed so simple when she said it, but standing here, alone in the middle of a dead carnival, those rules felt more like shackles. The carnival lights flickered, casting erratic flashes of color onto the cracked asphalt. The Ferris wheel groaned in the distance, its massive form swinging slightly in the wind. It seemed to be moving, yet there was no one in it. The place wasn't just abandoned, it was alive. Focus, I thought, trying to shake off the creeping unease. I knew what I had to do. I was here for a reason. I had a job to do, and the rules were simple. I walked toward the control panel. The metal door of the booth groaned as I opened it, and I slid into the cramped space. A single bulb overhead flickered weakly, casting dim shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. 11:57 p.m. I looked at the button. Turn. Off the lights at midnight. I was just doing my job. But as I watched the seconds tick away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The shadows outside the booth were too deep, and the carnival, despite being lifeless, seemed to be watching me. At exactly midnight, the lights flickered, stuttered, and then died. The carnival plunged into darkness. My heart skipped. I turned back to the control panel, unsure if I had done the right thing. I stood there in the pitch black, waiting for something to happen. But there was only silence. The Ferris wheel groaned again, a long, low creak of metal on metal. It started to turn slowly, its silhouette cutting through the darkness. The music began. It was soft at first, barely a whisper in the night, the same eerie tune that echoed from the Ferris wheel when I first arrived. It wasn't supposed to be playing, not by itself. I had broken the rule. The rule said to stay inside if I heard music from the Ferris wheel. But I was already outside, already making my way toward it. The temptation was too strong. I felt a pull. The carnival was alive, and I was part of it now. The music grew louder, wrapping itself around me like a dark, invisible rope. My legs carried me forward, past the dark shapes of the abandoned rides and empty tents. My feet dragged, but I couldn't stop. The whispers came again. Liam. The voice was soft, almost a hum in the wind. It was calling my name, but it wasn't a sound that should have come from the wind. It was human. It was familiar. I froze. My eyes darted toward the House of Mirrors. The place was dark, its glass windows reflecting nothing but the void. I remembered the second rule. Never enter the House of Mirrors alone. I hesitated, but the whispers were growing louder, and the pull was unbearable. Something was urging me inside, a force stronger than my will. I took a step forward. The door creaked as it opened, and I stepped into the House of Mirrors. The cold air hit me immediately, more biting than anything outside. The mirrors stood tall, lining the walls, reflecting distorted fragments of the room. The dim light of the moon filtered in through cracks in the walls, casting long shadows across the floor. I walked deeper into the maze, my heart pounding. The mirrors reflected my every move, but they didn't quite match. They were wrong, somehow. The reflections didn't feel like mine. They were too slow, too unnatural. I took another step. And that's when I saw it. In the reflection, I wasn't alone. There were faces in the glass, twisted, distorted, their eyes wide and empty. Hands reached out from the mirrors, clawing at the air. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, trapped by the reflections. A laugh echoed through the mirrors, sharp, grating, and full of malice. Another figure appeared in the reflection, a clown. The face was pale with hollow eyes that stared into mine. The lips curled into a grotesque smile, the teeth sharp and yellowed. The clown's face was a mask of cruelty, its eyes empty and cold, as if it was looking right into my soul. The laughter grew louder. I couldn't breathe. The mirrors around me shifted, warping and twisting, reflecting more clowns, more faces, their expressions distorted in ways that didn't make sense. They were laughing, all of them, their voices blending into a maddening chorus of sound. I tried to back away, but I couldn't move. The figures in the glass grew closer, their hands pressing against the mirror. I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. Suddenly, the glass cracked. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the surface, distorting the reflections even further. I turned to run. The laughter followed me, echoing in my ears, chasing me through the maze of mirrors. The air grew thick, and every step I took seemed to take me deeper into the labyrinth. The walls seemed to close in on me, twisting, bending, as if the house of mirrors had a mind of its own, pulling me toward some unknown fate. I reached the door, my hand shaking as I twisted the knob. The laughter grew louder behind me, a final mocking cackle that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. I pushed the door open, stumbling into the night air. But the laughter didn't stop. I looked around, gasping for breath, but the carnival had fallen silent again. The lights were out. The Ferris wheel had stopped moving. For a moment, everything was still. I thought I was safe, but then I heard it again, the whisper. "Liam!" I spun around, my heart racing, but there was nothing there. Only the empty, decaying carnival, its lifeless ride standing in the darkness. I was alone again, but I wasn't safe. The first night had ended, but it didn't feel like an end. It felt like I had only just begun to scratch the surface. The carnival wasn't abandoned, it was waiting, and I had only just begun to realize what it wanted from me. The question was, would I make it through the next night? The second night, it felt different, heavier. The unease from the first night clung to me like a shadow, no matter how much I tried to push it away. The events of the previous night, those distorted reflections, the laughter, the clown, had left a mark, an impression I couldn't scrub out. As I sat in the office, staring at the dim glow of the lamp, the silence felt suffocating. The kind of silence that only comes when you're aware that you're not truly alone, even if you can't see anyone. The clock on the wall ticked. Time was crawling. I tried to focus on the task at hand, follow the rules, the ones Martha had given me. I had to. There was no other choice. But with each passing second, I felt my grip on reality slipping. The carnival had an unnatural stillness to it. It was like a predator, waiting, watching. I glanced out the window. The Ferris wheel was still. No movement. But as I looked longer, I thought I saw it. Just a flicker of motion, a shift in the air. The wheel creaked again, its silhouette against the moonlit sky, faint but ominous. I was sure it hadn't moved on its own. The machinery must have been malfunctioning, right? That's what I told myself. But in my gut, I knew better. The air felt cold. The shadows outside stretched further than they should have. My mind wandered, and for a split second, I doubted whether I could survive another night here. 11:50 p.m. The clock ticked on. I couldn't help but keep my eyes on the window, watching the carnival grounds. The lights flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to crawl across the darkened land. The Ferris wheel groaned louder. Midnight. The air shifted. I rose slowly, feeling a strange weight settle on my chest. I knew the rules. The first one. Turn off the carnival lights at midnight. I couldn't afford to break it again, could I? After last night, I had no idea what would happen if I did. I hesitated for a moment longer than necessary. The fear was real. But I forced my hand to the control panel. The lights went out. For a moment there was silence. The stillness was unsettling, almost suffocating. The carnival, once alive with faint sounds, now felt like a tomb. The Ferris wheel remained still, but in my gut, I could feel it waiting. Then the music started. A soft hum, low at first like a whisper in the wind, the same tune, The Ferris wheel playing music on its own. It was wrong. The sound grew louder, more insistent. I stood frozen, staring at the silhouette of the Ferris wheel in the dark. My breath hitched. The rule was clear. Stay inside when you hear music from the Ferris wheel. But I couldn't ignore the pull. My feet felt like they were moving on their own. I had to see it. I had to understand what was happening. I didn't go out, though. I stayed in my office, my eyes glued to the window, the music echoing in my ears. It wasn't the music that frightened me. It was the silence that followed. The feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to make a move. I knew that the longer I stood there, the more I was tempting fate. Then it came. A voice, soft like a breath. Liam. It wasn't loud at first, just a murmur in the distance, barely discernible above the music. But it grew. The voice was gentle, coaxing, as though calling me from deep within the carnival's walls. It sounded familiar. Martha? I stood still, my heart racing. Don't look. The fourth rule. Never look behind you when you hear someone call your name. But I couldn't resist. I turned. Nothing. No one. The office was empty. The carnival grounds were silent. The Ferris wheel, still. The music had stopped. But something felt wrong. I could feel it, deep in my bones. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I took a shaky breath and turned back to the window. That's when I saw it. A shadow, a figure. Not just the Ferris wheel, not just the rides. It was the clown. Standing still in front of the Ferris wheel, its eyes locked onto mine. It was there, watching me with that twisted, too-wide grin. Its pale face gleamed in the dim moonlight, the hollow eyes staring at me, as though it could see right through me. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't an illusion. It was real. It was waiting. I stumbled back, my heart thudding in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I'd broken the rules again. And now this thing, this clown, was standing at the Ferris wheel, watching me. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak, like they might give out beneath me at any moment. The laughter came. Soft at first, then louder, echoing across the carnival, bouncing off the empty tents and silent rides. It was the clown. The laughter echoed in my head. I could feel it wrapping around me, suffocating me. I didn't know what to do. I should have stayed inside. I should have followed the rules. But I didn't. The clown didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me. The laughter faded, but its presence remained. Heavy, unyielding. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking, my mind spinning. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I felt paralyzed, as though the carnival had a hold on me, tightening with every passing second. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't stay. But what was the point of leaving? No matter where I went, the carnival would still be here, watching me, waiting. The second night ended, but it didn't feel like an end. It felt like the beginning of something much worse. The carnival was never truly abandoned, and now I knew. I wasn't just a visitor here. I was part of the performance. The carnival's grip on me was tightening with each passing night. It wasn't just the eerie sounds or the distorted figures in the shadows anymore. It was deeper, personal. The rules I had once clung to so desperately were slipping through my fingers. I could feel myself drawn to the very things that terrified me. The more I resisted, the more it pulled me in. The carnival wasn't just a place. It wasn't just an event. It was a force, alive, waiting for me to break the rules, to give in. And I did. The first violation was small. I ignored the music. The Ferris wheel played its haunting tune, and I went outside. Just to look. Just to prove to myself it wasn't real. But the moment I stepped onto the grounds, the carnival seemed to come alive. The lights flickered, shadows stretched unnaturally, and I could swear I saw faces in the windows of the House of Mirrors. But they weren't reflections. They were real. The second violation was harder to ignore. The clowns. I saw them again, in the reflections. But this time, they weren't just standing there. They moved. They followed me. Their laughter, guttural and hollow, echoed through the carnival like a living thing, pressing in on me, suffocating me with its presence. The third violation? I entered the house of mirrors again, alone, against the rule. I wanted answers, but all I found was confusion, distorted faces, eyes wide open and empty, mouths moving in silent screams. Who were they? Why were they trapped in there? They weren't just reflections. They were people. And then came the fourth violation. I heard my name. Liam, a voice soft and almost gentle, but it was wrong. The voice didn't belong to anyone I knew. I tried to resist the urge to look, but I couldn't. I turned around, and there it was, the clown. It was standing in the distance just outside the Ferris wheel, its pale face gleaming under the flickering lights. Its eyes were hollow, its smile too wide, too knowing. It didn't blink. It just watched me. The carnival was watching me. With every violation, things grew darker. The carnival became more vivid, more real. And I became more desperate to find answers, to understand what was happening. The visions of people trapped here, desperate to escape, haunted me. Faces I didn't recognize, but I felt their fear. It was the same fear I was beginning to feel in my bones, the fear that I wasn't just a witness to this twisted spectacle. I was becoming a part of it. The third night, I could barely hold on. The rules had become more than just something to follow. They were chains, keeping me tethered to this nightmare. I had to break free, but I couldn't. I was losing myself. That's when I found it. A door, hidden beneath the Ferris wheel, almost buried by overgrown vines and old, crumbling boards. At first, I didn't know how I had even found it, but as soon as my eyes landed on it, I knew I had to open it. I pushed the door open, the air inside thick with dust. The smell of decay was overpowering, but I didn't hesitate. I stepped into the darkness, the silence pressing in around me. I was not alone. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw them, the performers. They were lying in rows, their bodies contorted in grotesque positions. Their eyes were wide open, lifeless. Their faces, pale and decomposed, stared at nothing. The air in the room was thick with the smell of rot, but they were not dead. They couldn't be. They were trapped. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. These were the circus performers who had once been part of the carnival show. They weren't gone. They were caught in time, their bodies decaying, their souls locked in this endless loop of performance. I could feel them, watching me. I turned, desperate to leave, but as I did, something caught my eye, a reflection in the far corner of the room, a shadow. It was me. I didn't know how or why, but the reflection showed me standing there with them, in the same twisted pose, with the same hollow eyes. I was one of them. I had become part of the show, my breath caught in my throat. My hands shook as I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. Number, this couldn't be happening. Ran toward the door, the sound of footsteps following me in the shadows. The laughter echoed in my ears, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if it was the clown or something else. I made it out, but it didn't feel like an escape. The carnival had changed. I had changed. The walls, the shadows, the lights, they all seemed to be watching, waiting. I felt myself being pulled deeper into the web. The carnival had claimed me, just like it had claimed those before me. The more I resisted, the stronger it became. I wasn't just witnessing the carnival anymore. I was a part of it. I could feel it in my chest, a growing force, a dark magic I couldn't explain. I wasn't just breaking the rules, I was becoming the show. I had no choice. I had to finish it. The show would never end. I would never leave. The days blurred together after that. I couldn't escape the carnival. I couldn't escape the memories of the performers, their eyes locked in that endless stare. I tried to sleep, but the dreams were worse than the waking hours. The clowns, the children, the distorted faces, they were always there, watching me, waiting for me to join them. Every time I tried to leave, something stopped me. The door would be locked, the gate would be shut, the carnival would rise again, dragging me back into its twisted grasp. And then, one night, as I wandered the grounds, the carnival finally spoke. It wasn't through sound or through voice. It was in the very air, thick with the weight of years of pain and suffering. The carnival had been waiting for me, and now I was part of it. The carnival was no longer a place. It had become something else, something darker. As the nights wore on, I began to feel it more and more. The air was thick with a presence that seemed to press down on me, suffocating me with each passing moment. The laughter, the music, the whispers. It was as though the carnival was alive, breathing, watching. It had me in its grip, and every violation of the rules only made that grip tighter. I had broken every rule except one. Never look behind you when you hear your name. The voice had called me every night, softer at first, but now louder, more insistent. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a command, something I had to obey. And deep down, I knew the truth. The rules had never been about keeping me safe. They weren't meant to protect me from the darkness of the carnival. They were meant to keep me here, trapped. But now, I had no choice. I had to face it. I had to look. The whisper came again. This time it felt like a hand on my back pushing me toward the inevitable. Liam. The voice was close. I could feel it in my bones. It wasn't Martha. It wasn't anyone I knew. But somehow I couldn't stop myself. I knew what would happen if I looked, but I turned around anyway. The clown. It was standing there, just a few feet away, its hollow eyes staring at me. The smile stretched impossibly wide, its lips cracked, its teeth yellow and broken. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me, waiting. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The carnival had always been alive, but now it felt like it was feeding on my fear, growing stronger with every second. The shadows deepened, and I could feel them closing in on me. I was no longer just a spectator to this twisted show. I was part of it. The laughter started again. This time, it wasn't just one clown. It was dozens of them, their voices blending together in a discordant symphony of mockery and malice. The sound filled the carnival, rattling the empty tents and the creaking rides, echoing off the mirrors in the House of Mirrors. I could feel the air around me grow heavier. It wasn't just the laughter, it was the souls of the carnival, trapped here for eternity. The performers, the children, the clowns, they were all part of the show, cursed to perform forever. And now, I was becoming part of them. The carnival had claimed me. I had broken the final rule, and now I was no longer just a visitor. I was one of the performers. I could feel it in my chest, a heavy weight that was settling over me, pressing down on me until I couldn't breathe. I was becoming part of the twisted performance, trapped in the carnival's endless loop. I turned again, unable to stop myself. The carnival had me, and it was no longer a question of survival. The rules had never been about surviving. They were about keeping me here, keeping me in the show. The clown didn't move. It just watched me with those hollow eyes, its grin wide and mocking. The others were still there, in the shadows, in the reflections, in the corners of my vision. I could feel them all around me, their eyes locked on me, their smiles stretching in the same grotesque way. And then I saw it. A mirror. At first, I didn't recognize myself. The face staring back at me wasn't my own. It was the clown. It was me. I'd become a part of the carnival, a part of the twisted performance that would never end. I could feel the grin spread across my face. I wasn't smiling. It wasn't my smile. It was the clown's smile, the carnival's smile. I had become the show, and there was no way out. The laughter filled my ears, the echoes of countless souls trapped in the carnival forever. It wasn't just the clown anymore, it was me. I was the show, and the show would never end. My voice echoed through the empty grounds. I should have followed the rules. And with that, the carnival's grip tightened, and I was locked in place forever.